Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on my YouTube channel. Take two. We had to try to start this a little bit earlier, but for some reason we couldn't get the audio to stream. But we're back up and running, and the audio, yes, indeed, I've just heard it. It is indeed streaming. Thanks for being here to get to guys as we take another shot of this. Now, Open Mic here is kind of like the John Campea show in the morning, except in the John Campea show, we save a little bit of time for some live questions, but here in the afternoon, that's all it is. It's open forum, talking about our favorite things, movies, some television, a little bit of sports if you want to. Just a bunch of friends standing around a virtual water cooler talking about our favorite stuff. So, now that we seem to be all up and running, people in the chat bar are saying, wow, I hear stuff. Amazing! Let's dive right into it and get to the first question today. And the first question today, if I can find it here, there it is, comes to us from Chris Warden, who writes, like many, I was not happy with how the Disney James Gunn situation was handled. However, I'm not losing sleep over it either. Disney is paying Gunn $10+ million to walk away, and other studios are already lining up to work with him. Yes, so look, James Gunn is going to be fine. I mean, the Hollywood Reporter, Variety has already announced that every single studio, including Warner Brothers, is already lining up and offering him big, high-profile projects. Plus, he's getting a very nice payout from Disney. He's going to be fine. I think it's just that somebody like me, who is a big Disney fan, and somebody like me, who is a big fan of somebody like Alan Horn, I was just really disappointed with how they chose to handle it. Like, Alan Horn rushed to make a very harsh statement without consulting enough people, without taking time to really deliberate it, to really think it through. And then, like I said this before, but I'll say it again. Had Alan Horn lied in a statement, making it sound like they had no idea James Gunn had, like, potentially offensive tweets from 10 years ago, yes, they did. Don't believe anybody who tells you they didn't. All right? A high school newspaper knows to look into the social media background of somebody they're going to hire into an important position. Vetting candidates is very important, and it's been around for decades. They knew. So if Alan Horn had simply come out and said, look, we at Disney are aware of the tweets that James Gunn had made so many years ago, but, you know, we became confident in who he is as a person now. We were satisfied that he had changed his behavior many years ago, and we have loved working with him, and we've enjoyed great success with him. However, as a company, we at Disney are very sensitive to the feelings of our audience, and we understand a number of our audience are very upset by what they've read, so we've spoken to James, and we've mutually decided to part ways for now. We think it would be best for all parties. Like, if Alan Horn had put out a statement like that, said, hey, we're parting ways with James Gunn. We knew this was we knew these were tweets before, but we were very confident in who he was now as a person. But we're very sensitive that some people are unhappy, and so we've spoken to James and we decided to part ways. Had they handled it like that, I don't think you'd see Dave Bautista as upset. I don't think you would have seen the entire cast of Guardians of the Galaxy having to write a letter and sign it supporting James Gunn. I don't think there would have been any of the controversy. I think we would have went, well, he wrote some stupid tweets about 10 years ago. Idiot. But, all right. And there were some people upset about it, and they decided, hey, you know what, for now it's best to part ways. I really don't think it would have been anywhere near as big of a controversy. Alan Horn would have saved face. Disney would have saved face. You wouldn't have all this animosity now between some of the cast and Disney. Would have been handled very differently. So, as a fan of Alan Horn, as a fan of Disney, I'm very, very disappointed in how they conducted themselves and what they did. And look, just because you're a fan of something doesn't mean you shouldn't call them out on their bullshit. And I call BS on how this was handled. I'm still a fan, but this was BS the way this was handled. And, you know, here's hoping they learn from this experience and conduct themselves better in the future. But absolutely, Chris, don't you worry one little bit about James Gunn. He's going to be laughing himself all the way to the bank with that $10 million check for doing nothing. Oh, wait, you want to give me a $10 million check to not come into work? And I just get $10 million? And I can go direct for other people who are knocking on my door as we speak, begging me to make their films? Okay. I think all of us would love to get fired that way. But yeah, don't worry about James. All right, Ben Rayner writes, if I were Disney, I would out Guardians in back burner. I think you probably meant put. I would put Guardians on the back burner and do other movies before. There's no need to do it right now. Just seems like too much hassle with Dave. Well, I mean, there's other considerations to keep in mind here, though. Ben, you got to take into consideration your actors' schedules. You also have to take into consideration that while you may sign like a 4-film deal with somebody, right? It's probably built into the contract that 4-film deal isn't forever. There's probably a time limit on as well. So I'm speaking theoretically here, but if Chris Pine, like let's say Chris Pine, Christopher Pratt, let's say he's got a 6-film deal and he's got 2 films left on that deal. Disney doesn't just get to sit on that forever and just whenever they want, they can call in those 2 films. There's probably an expiration date on that. It's probably got to be done within a certain amount of time, within a certain amount of years, right? So you got to be cautious of that. The other thing you got to be cautious of is scheduling. But the other thing you got to be cautious of is this. It all depends on what Kevin Feige had in mind for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Because we are seeing more and more that Marvel is very loosely connecting all this together. Speculating here, but that could be one of the possibilities. So the idea of just, well, let's just put off Guardians and put Guardians on the back burner for a couple of years, that may completely throw a wrench. We don't know, I'm speculating, but that could throw a complete wrench into Kevin Feige's plans for what he was doing. It may have to make, now we got to rewrite this script and rewrite, I mean, it could be a much bigger headache trying to put Guardians on the back burner and reshape everything else. Look, it's a mess of a situation. There's no easy way out of this. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be bruises. There's going to be problems. Yes, but they're just going to have to work their way through it one way or the other. But I don't think just putting it on the back burner indefinitely is the answer. I think they're going to want to try to get this thing up and running again within the year. I'm fairly positive within the year, the whole process with Guardians of the Galaxy 3 will be back up and running again. Whether or not it'll have Dave Bautista in it, we'll have to wait and see. All right. Alexander Helmer writes, why is there no Oscar for Best Film Ensemble? You know what? That is the one Oscar category I am very much in favor of there being, because the Screen Actors Guild, they have the annual SAG Awards, which is kind of like the Oscars, but just for acting, right? And their big prize, their big award at the end is Best Ensemble. That's kind of SAG's way of saying, this is our version of Best Picture, right? So they have Best Ensemble. So, why doesn't the Oscars? Why doesn't the Oscars? You got Best Lead Actor, Best Lead Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actor. That's great. But I do think there is room there for recognition for Best Ensemble Cast. Like, a great example would be, let's look back at Return of the King. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. No other film in history has won more Academy Awards than Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. But you want to know what it didn't win? Any acting awards. It wasn't nominated for any acting awards. And I get it, that's fine. But I guarantee you, when you look at the entire body of that cast and how good everybody played their roles, that would have been its 12th Oscar for Best Ensemble. And I agree with you, Alex. I think there should be a Best Ensemble. The SAG Awards have it. I think the Oscars should have it. I really do. Now, I'm usually talking about which categories they should cut, but the one I'm totally in favor of is the one you're mentioning, Alexander, which is adding the award of Best Ensemble. I think that just makes sense. Let's see. Ben Heyusa writes, so only 2 big movies to see in September, The Nun and The Predator. While Predator does look good, I'm looking more forward to The Nun. Me, my sister, her boyfriend, we're huge Conjuring fans, though she's easy to get jump scares. Yeah, I mean, Anne gets terrified at horror films. Anne gets terrified at horror films, so I'm totally down with you that. You know what? I was with you, Ben, on more looking forward to The Nun over The Predator until I saw the new Red Band Predator trailer. Once I saw the new Red Band Predator trailer, I went, okay, that whole awesome 80s kind of feel, and they seem to have nailed it. I'm on board. So before that Red Band trailer, I was looking more forward to The Nun as well. But I got to say, this new trailer made me kind of more lean towards The Predator. Now, that's not to say I'm not looking forward to The Nun. I'm very much looking forward to The Nun. I've really liked the Conjuring films. The only Conjuring Universe film that has kind of let me down and let all of us down was that first Annabelle film. The second one was solid. The second Annabelle, what was it called? Annabelle Creation? Is that what it's called? Anyway. Annabelle 2 was quite solid. That was a solid movie. I enjoyed it a lot. But that first one, not a lot of... They dropped the ball on the first one. I think they dropped the ball. But other than that, it's been a solid universe. And the trailers for The Nun have looked creepy. Going right for all the strengths of the Conjuring universe. It's worked really well for me. So, yeah, but again, the Red Band trailer for Predator made me lean more towards Predator, so I'll probably be watching that one before I watch The Nun. All right. Vrinder Singh writes, just rewatched The Dark Knight Rises. Good film, but 3 big problems for me were not enough Batman, Bane's terrible voice, and I think Nolan went for too much of an epic feel, which didn't quite work. You know what? I've never really heard anybody make that particular criticism, Vrinder, about going for making it big and epic. But now that I think about it, I think you're probably right. It was a film that did have a slightly smaller scale feel to it, and it probably should have aimed for that, but I don't think that was a big problem. Look, I've always said, and I still believe, that The Dark Knight Rises is a good movie, but disappointing at the same time. You know, that came up on the show the other day. Somebody was asking, is something good or is it disappointing? I said, you can be both. Disappointing doesn't mean bad. Disappointing just means it didn't live up to what you were hoping it would live up to. But it can do that and still be a good film. And I think The Dark Knight Rises is still a good movie. I like it. I think it's a good movie. I just don't think it's anywhere near as good as Batman Begins or The Dark Knight. And several of the problems, not enough Batman, I can live with that. Bane's voice was a bit of a struggle. I mean, it was a little bit too much. I still remember there was a press event about 2 months before The Dark Knight came out. And Christopher Nolan was there. And a few of us got invited to watch like the first 10 minutes of The Dark Knight Rises. And Christopher Nolan was there to introduce it and blah, blah, blah. And we got to talk to him afterwards. It was great. But almost all of us, we came walking out. Because remember, that's that airplane scene at the beginning? All of us came walking out saying, like, was it just me or could we not understand Tom Hardy at all? None of us knew whatever the hell it was Tom Hardy was saying. And we're like, none of us knew what he was talking about. None. Now, that became a story, if you remember, going around that, hey, there was this advanced sneak peek of the first 10 minutes of the movie, and there's a lot of complaints that people had no idea what Bane was saying, right? Blah, blah, blah. Then, when the movie came out, a story went around saying Warner Brothers must have listened because they cleaned up Bane's voice a little bit. Now, they denied that happened. Warner Brothers says, no, we didn't change anything from when that first advanced press screening, the first 10 minutes, to when the movie came out. We never changed a thing. Yes, they did. Because when I went and watched The Dark Knight Rises in theater again to watch the full movie, while Bane was still talking like this, I could understand what he was saying for the most part. The first time, no clue. Nobody in that theater had the slightest clue what Tom Hardy was saying. None. When the movie came out and I watched, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. It's hard to make out some of the stuff he's saying, but I can get the gist of what he's saying now. The last time, no. No. And Warner Brothers denied this. Christopher Nolan denied it, but it's the truth. There was a big difference between that first screening of his voice and the first time I saw it in the full actual movie. So they absolutely did improve it, but it was still a problem for a lot of people, unfortunately. To me, the bigger issues with The Dark Knight Rises have to do with narrative. I had some issues with the narrative. Again, still a good movie, but yeah, clearly the third place film, to me at any rate, of the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. All right, let's go on here. James Argenta writes, over under 25%, Captain America will come face-to-face with Red Skull on Vormir in Avengers 4. Way under. I see no reason or purpose for Captain America to go to Vormir. I see no reason or purpose for it. The Soul Stone's already been found. So, yeah, I honestly don't even see any purpose for a Red Skull to pop back up. Although I would love it because it was the first moment in Avengers Infinity War that my jaw dropped open. Was when Red Skull appeared. my jaw just dropped open. And then it dropped open again 1 or 2 more times in the movie. But that was the first time in Infinity War that my mouth went, oh, like I couldn't believe it. And I turned to Anne with great excitement. I don't think Anne got what was happening, but I kept turning to Anne in such excitement for what was happening. But yeah, I'm not even sure they're going to have Red Skull. And even so, there is absolutely no purpose for Captain America to go back there. I won't say 0, but I'll definitely take the under on 25%. Alexander Helmer writes, why isn't the new Halloween coming out on October 31st? Oh, because that would be horrible. That would be a very bad move. You're going to open it on Halloween, and then Halloween's over. You're going to open it on Halloween, but then Halloween's over. It is much better. Like, I believe it's opening on the 19th or something. That is way smarter, because you open it before, you're in the midst of the Halloween season, right? You're building up to the Halloween season, and then the movie's in theaters, and it's still in theaters when Halloween hits. So you're taking advantage of all that build up to the day of Halloween. You're taking advantage of the season of Halloween, blah, blah, blah. But once October 31st ends, and we're getting November, the Halloween season is over, right? It's over. So you don't want to open your movie on that day. You open it prior to that day to take advantage of the Halloween season. And then when the day Halloween hits, your movie's still in theaters and have been in theaters for about 10 days. Perfect. As opposed to opening it on Halloween day, and then that's it. You just blew your load for one day. Now your movie is going into its second week on November 12th, as opposed to going into your second week on Halloween day. Yeah, it makes far more sense to open the film earlier and lead up to that day than opening it on that day and then being done with the season. You know what I'm saying? So that makes far more sense to do it that way. Ben Hayusa writes, non-movie related, also cool to know that you got good taste in music. U2 is good. I listen to all genres as well. My favorite bands are Linkin Park. I love Linkin Park. Skillet, Disturbed, Metallica, and Breaking Benjamin. Yeah, I listen to a wide variety of music. Again, really the only music I don't listen to is country. I've just never been a country music fan. I don't like country music. I'm not trashing country music. I just don't like it. Although I got a little bit of a bro crush on Blake Shelton from The Voice. I've never even heard of Blake Shelton before Ann and I started watching The Voice. I don't watch it much anymore, but used to watch it. I think he's like one of the funniest guys on television. So I'm like, okay, I'll listen to some of his music. I still am not a big fan of the music-wise, but I'm a big fan of Blake Shelton. But yeah, I listen to just about everything. Sebastian writes, John, this won't make sense. Insert dumb question. Thank you so much. Sebastian often sends in questions, and I have a feeling English is not Sebastian's first language, so he struggles with it. He tries his best, though. And so oftentimes, though, I feel really bad because he'll send in a question that I don't understand what he's saying, and go, Sebastian, sorry, man, I don't understand what he's saying, and I have to move on. So he just sends in, John, this won't make sense. Insert dumb question. Very good, Sebastian. Very good. Cameron Belgrade writes, ever since Gary Oldman won, I've been trying to think who's the best actor without an Oscar on their mantle. What about Viggo Mortensen? Viggo's really good. Viggo's really good, and he's got a nomination or two as well. I just haven't seen enough of body of work from him to really do that. He hasn't worked enough. But he's definitely a good name to have in that conversation. A couple of names that really stand out to me. Number one, to me, and this is all subjective, but to me, it's no questions asked. The best actor today, who does not currently have an Oscar sitting on his or her mantle, is Ralph Fiennes. Ralph Fiennes is simply one of the best actors in the world. He's certainly not one of the biggest movie stars, but he is simply one of the best actors in the world, period, with or without an Oscar. And he doesn't have, yes, I'm talking about Voldemort. I'm not talking about a specific role in Voldemort, role in that movie, but Ralph Fiennes is like stupid good. Stupid good. Beyond that, Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix has 3 Academy Award nominations. He got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for Gladiator. Then he got a Best Actor nomination for Walk the Line. Some people think he should have won. Then he got a Best Actor nomination for, what's that one he did with Philip Seymour Hoffman? Something about The Master. Anyway, I can't remember exactly the name of it. But then there's a guy who's one of the most highly underrated actors in the world is Chiwetel Ejiofor. I've been banging the Chiwetel Ejiofor drum ever since I saw Serenity. when he gave us one of the best villain performances in any movie ever, period, end stop. I'm not saying Serenity is one of the greatest movies of all time, period, end stop, but he gave us one of the best performances of a villain in a movie ever. When he played the operative in Serenity. He's so good in it. So good. Obviously, he got nominated for Best Actor for 12 Years a Slave. Unfortunately for Chiwetel, he ran into The Reconnaissance, and that was the year Matthew McConaughey won his Academy Award for Dallas Buyers Club. There was nothing that was going to stop him. But if it wasn't for Matthew McConaughey that year, I'm telling you right now, Chiwetel Ejiofor would have an Oscar on his mantle. For sure. So those are the names that come to mind most quickly for me, but it's always a fun discussion to have. Best Actor to not have an Academy Award. Best Actress to not have an Academy Award. These are always fun, like Best Director to not have an Academy Award. These are always fun discussions to have. I always like those. Sebastian writes, write this down for 9/4/18. Top Gun 2 is a winner. For September 4th, 2000. It is September 4th, 2018. Do you mean to write September 4th, 2019 or 2020? Because we're not going to see Top Gun 2 in theaters until at least 2020. So maybe you meant 2020 on that. I'll just assume you meant 2020. Zach Bartran writes, has a documentary ever been nominated for Best Picture? If not, is there a certain stigma in the Academy as to why one hasn't? To the best of my knowledge, I don't think any documentary's ever been nominated for Best Picture. You know, that's a very interesting question. Let me look it up. Documentary nominated for Best Picture. I don't think there has. No, it hasn't. I think it's just such a different kind of, I mean, like, documentaries, it is tough, and I love a good, you guys have heard me talk about lots of documentaries. I love documentaries, but documentaries are very different kinds of things from narrative storytelling. They're very, very different. I think it's great that they even have a category for Best Documentary, but like you don't have a script per se. You don't have a lead actor. You don't have a lead actress. You don't have, like, it's such a different animal from narrative storytelling that I don't know that there's a rule that says that a documentary can't be nominated for Best Picture. But I gotta say, if I were an Academy member, and I could be right or wrong here. I could be right about this. I could be wrong. I'm just saying, if I was a voting Academy member right now, I don't think I would ever vote for a documentary for the Best Picture category. It's just too much of a different thing. It's like trying to compare a horse to a race car. Both have their advantages and everything, but they're two totally, you can't compare them. They're completely different things. So I don't think there's ever been a documentary nominated. If I were a voting member, I never would vote for a documentary for Best Picture. And maybe I'm right about that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But it's just, to me, it's such a different beast. A documentary is such a wildly different thing than a narrative movie that it just seems awkward to say they can fit in any kind of the same category. It wouldn't make sense to me. So yeah, but you know what? I don't know. Maybe I'd think about that overnight and have a completely different thought tomorrow. It's an interesting thought. Like, I love documentaries, and I'm glad they're part of the Oscars. But yeah, it's an interesting question, Zach. It's a really interesting one. What do you guys think? Like, if you were voting Academy members, do you think, like I do right now, that, look, a documentary is just so radically different than what a narrative movie is, you can't put them in the same category? Or are you the mindset that, hey, movie's a movie, man, and if it's great, it should be nominated for Best Picture? That's one way to look at it, too. What would you guys do? Jump into the comments section. Let me know your thoughts. All right. Donaldo Martinez writes, will you be reviewing Castlevania Season 2 on October 26th? I don't know. Maybe. I reviewed Castlevania Season 1, but I only decided to review it because I saw the first episode and I liked it, and there were only 3 more episodes, so I finished it out and decided, yeah, I want to review this. So I don't know. I'll probably watch the first episode, see if I like it, and if so, maybe I'll move on to actually review the thing. But as of right now, I can't be committed to it because I just don't know at this point. Vrinder Singh writes, How important is music and soundtrack for you in movies? For me, it's really important. I can't imagine what films like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings would have been like with poor music. Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I'll tell you one great story, though. On Friday night, this past Friday, Ann and I and a couple of our friends, we went to go see John Williams in concert at the Hollywood Bowl. Now, if you followed me for any period of time, you know Ann and I do this every year. We go to the annual John Williams concert. What I did not know going into this John Williams concert, and that I almost cried, I'm not kidding, I almost cried when I found this out, was that Steven Spielberg was going to be there that night. And sure enough, at some point in the concert, Steven Spielberg comes out on stage, and they do this whole big portion of the John Williams concert where Steven Spielberg tells these stories in between to set up the next musical piece, right? And one of the things they did was, to give you an idea, I can't do a good Steven Spielberg impersonation, but to give you an idea of just how important music is, I once sent over the first 7 minutes of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The one with River Phoenix playing young Indiana Jones in the beginning. And I sent that over to John Williams. I'm going to show you the 7 minutes of this movie before John Williams got his hands on it. And then we're going to watch it again. But the second time, John Williams and his orchestra will play along for the music that he wrote for it. And it was amazing. It is so funny watching those first couple of minutes of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with no music. Just the dialogue and some sound effects. And no music. And then he played it all again, but this time John Williams and his orchestra played along. Such a difference. Such a radical difference. It was so cool to listen to. I just had a blast at it, man. So anyway, music is clearly incredibly, incredibly important. Whether or not it changes a movie from what music doesn't do is music won't change a bad movie into a good movie. It can accentuate and heighten it. So even if you have like not a great score attached to it, it will at least be a score, and maybe it won't accentuate the movie anymore. Maybe even drag it down a bit. But I don't think poor soundtrack music will turn a good movie into a bad movie. I don't think a great score will turn a bad movie into a good movie, but it will accentuate it for sure. And the fact that I can sit down and you could sit down in a John Williams concert and recognize instantly every piece of music he plays is a testament to that. It's totally a testament to that. So a good thought, Vrinder. All right, Trevor Johnson writes, for Avengers 4, I think we'll see the glimpse of the rest of the universe coming after Thanos. I think the entire galaxy will be after him. I don't think so. I really don't. It's done. Damage is done. And what's the point in going after the most powerful being in the universe? Because remember, you and I, as audience members, we saw the snap and we saw that it damaged, or as the Russo brothers put it, permanently damaged Thanos and the gauntlet. You saw that and I saw that. The rest of the universe didn't see that. The only other person who saw that was Thor. The only other person who saw that was Thor. Nobody else in the galaxy saw that. So if the damage is already done, and Thanos has done what he set out to do, which is wipe out half the life in the universe, do you really mount an offense and try to gather an army to go after Thanos, who with a snap of his finger could eradicate your army, could eradicate your forces, could eradicate your world if he wanted to? Or do you go, let's just leave Thanos alone? Now, obviously, the Avengers aren't going to do that. But for that reason, I don't think the universe is going to go after him. The damage is done, and for all they know, he's still perfectly healthy. He's got a fully functional Infinity Gauntlet. He's got all the stones. And if they come after him, he goes, oh, so you look, okay, boom, again. Now your whole world's gone. How do you like that? You know, I don't think they'd want to risk it. So I don't think we're going to see that. But we will obviously see the Avengers trying to do something about it. All right. Zach Bartran writes, finally watched the 1978 Superman for the first time over the weekend, and while I did enjoy it, and Christopher Reeves is great, but Man of Steel would still be my pick for the best Superman film. I completely agree with you, Zach. I completely agree. The first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve is great. But people get angry at me when I say, but it doesn't really stand up. And it doesn't. The original doesn't really stand up. And while the Christopher Reeve Superman, who played it with the, gosh golly, let me get that apple pie out of that tree for you, miss, and I'll go save your cat. Golly gee. Like, while that Superman played great in its time, that Superman would be ridiculous today. It would be absolutely ridiculous today. And that's kind of what I mean why it doesn't really stand up. It didn't age well. The 1978 Superman doesn't age well. And so while I acknowledge how great it is and the importance of it and all that kind of stuff, people get mad at me when I say it, but I stand by it. I believe Man of Steel is the best Superman movie ever made. Yes, better than the original Superman. Yes, better than Superman 2. I think Man of Steel is the best Superman movie ever. And I'm not trashing on the original Superman or Superman 2 when I say that. Not at all. I love Superman 2. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? But I do believe Man of Steel is better. Because both of them have some aging problems. They do. Zach follows up with, I've always wondered what are the differences between producer, associate producer, and executive producer. I've talked about this many times, Zach, and it's a totally legit question. The reality is nobody really knows because it's different from movie to movie. Here's the thing. Somebody can call themselves a producer on a movie and literally not do anything on the film. Like, somebody can literally have a producer credit on the film and maybe they made one phone call for you. It's like, let's say I know, let's say I know Harrison Ford and you want to get Harrison Ford in your movie. Hey, John, can you call Harrison Ford? Sure. Hey, Harrison, listen, my buddy, Zach, he's making this movie. I'd like to connect the two of you because I think he's got a movie you might be interested in. But for doing that, you give me a producer credit. Yay! Then you get some guys who are producers who will work and slave for 10 years on a project before they bring a director on board and get the film made and all that kind of stuff. And has worked day and night for half their lives maybe on a thing. And that guy has the same credit, producer, as the guy who made one phone call. Right? An associate producer is usually a lower level thing, but I mean, it's so hard to truly nail down a true functional definition when everybody treats them very, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Treats them all very nebulously. You know, so one executive producer may spend 10 minutes of paying attention to a certain movie project. Another executive producer worked 5 years on it. It's really hard to say. It's very nebulous. It is very, very nebulous. So that completely makes it understandable that anybody would be confused about the differences between the roles. Like you say director, you know what you're getting. You know who the director is. You know what the director does. That's beyond question, right? But, I mean, when you're talking about a producer role and everybody has different definitions, how's anybody supposed to feel confident knowing what they're talking about? Anyway. Donaldo Martinez writes, curious, why such a long gap between seasons 1 and 2 for Castlevania? Smaller budget or low staff? Considering first season was only 4 episodes, no idea. I honestly don't. I have no question. I have no idea about it. The only thing I can imagine, and I could be way off on this, I'm just speculating, was that it is a relatively small company that did it. I believe Adi Shankar, remember Adi Shankar from that infamous episode of Heroes that me and John Schnepp did with him? We had Adi Shankar. I believe Adi Shankar is the producer of that. Anyway, the only thing I can imagine was that they have a small crew, and it may have taken them forever to make those 4 episodes, had no idea if Netflix would order a second, then Netflix did, and they're like, okay, let's start work. I mean, and then it, you know, again, maybe with a small crew, limited budget, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Whatever their reasons are, they know. I'm just speculating, so it's hard to say. Trevor Johnson writes, also on Predator, Alan Silvestri did the score. Same man who gave us Avengers score, etc. Blows my mind, the music creative genius of film composers. Seriously, sitting down watching John Williams, who is undisputedly the greatest of all time, and playing like 80 different pieces of music and you recognize all of them, you start to appreciate the absolute, exactly the way you said it, Trevor, the creative genius that these composers are. Like, creating this music that plays with and accentuates the individual notes and things that happens in movies. You cannot overstate the geniuses these people are, particularly the ones that do it well, like Silvestri, like John Williams, like others. It's just crazy how talented these people are. Like, I just sit in utter amazement. Just in complete amazement when I see what these guys do. And that's, like, I'm a musician. And so it's like, and I could never do anything like that. Like, it's just, blah. It's crazy good. Kyle Beckworth writes, loved Amazon's Jack Ryan. Very cinematic. Had a 24 feel to it minus the clock. John Krasinski is outstanding. Wendell Pierce is great as well. I'm so glad to hear you say that, Kyle, because I haven't seen it yet myself. And you guys know I've been very excited to watch it. And I heard, before the show released, I heard some lukewarm things about it. But I'm now here, now that the first few episodes are out, I hear people talking about it and saying that it's actually really good, including you, Kyle. So I'm very relieved to hear that. I'm very excited about seeing it. I was a little pessimistic, I think, at first. And then the first trailer came out. I'm like, okay, no, this feels right. This feels right to me. So I've been really excited about it ever since. I especially got more excited because, you know, we saw A Quiet Place and we saw John Krasinski really bringing it dramatically on screen. So I was really curious at that point to see what he could do with the Jack Ryan character. You know, that he would live up to the great historical legacy as fulfilled by Ben Affleck, Alec Baldwin, and Harrison Ford playing the role. Now we've got John Krasinski. Super excited to see it. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, man. All right, Murray Reich writes, Kylo, that lightsaber, it belongs to me, Indiana Jones. It belongs in a museum. Speaking of which, remember that scene I was telling you about that they played at the John Williams concert? That's one of the big lines in that opening scene of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is young River Phoenix Indiana Jones saying, it belongs in a museum. So that was kind of the origin of the line. Nice line. Murray follows it up. Who wins, Dominic Toretto or Wile E. Coyote? Oh, that's the easiest questions I've ever been asked. That is the easiest question I've ever been asked. Dominic Toretto. Point to me one time Wile E. Coyote has ever won. He may not have died, but tell me one time Wile E. Coyote actually won. He loses every time to a bird. To a flightless bird. Not just a bird, a flightless bird. And Wile E. Coyote loses every single time. So, who wins? Dominic Toretto. He may not kill the coyote, but he'll definitely beat the coyote because the coyote can't beat anything. All right. Javier Riaz 405 writes, what are your thoughts on Charlie Sheen? I don't know. I don't want to sit here and make comments about a man's life. I'll say this. There was an era where I thought he was a pretty funny performer. I mean, like Hot Shots, absolutely. I loved him in that. What was the one he did with his brother where he was a garbage man? Him and Emilio Estevez. And yes, Emilio, I just blew some of your minds. Some of you didn't know Emilio Estevez is Charlie Sheen's brother. Forget it, but I remember I liked that movie. I liked that one. So there was an era where I really liked his stuff. He hasn't done anything of note lately, so I can't really comment. And I don't want to sit here and make comments about a guy's personal life. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. Sebastian writes, John, for your life story, protagonist or antagonist? Well, whoever the story is about is always your protagonist. You know, in the Avengers story, Thanos is the antagonist. But in Thanos' story, he's the protagonist. So if there's ever a movie about somebody, that somebody is your protagonist. So so in my life story, I'm the protagonist. Roy L. writes, Scrubs is my all-time favorite comedy TV series. I used to love Scrubs, man. I love that show. What's yours? It always comes down to either Seinfeld, The Office, or Parks and Rec. Those to me are the three funniest shows ever made in history. And mostly probably comes down between The Office and Seinfeld. Seinfeld, beyond a doubt, is the most iconic sitcom of all time. I mean, it's Seinfeld. But The Office is immortal. And Parks and Rec, which I put off watching for a while because to me it looked like a poor man's The Office ripoff. And I actually oh man, there are times when I like Parks and Rec even more than The Office. But yeah, those are the three that come to my mind. Okay. Ben Rayner writes, do you think it would have been cheaper for Disney to cancel Solo instead of doubling the budget out? Do you think it would have been cheaper for Disney to cancel Solo instead of doubling the budget out? I'm not quite sure what you're saying in your last part there, but no, it would not have been cheaper, because at that point, with everything with development and all that kind of stuff in, ultimately Solo lost less money. And so make no mistake, Solo lost money. Make no mistake. Ultimately, it lost less money, though, than they would have had they just pulled the plug after the Lord and Miller fiasco. If they had just pulled the plug after the Lord and Miller fiasco, they would have lost even more money than they did. So they made up for that, but couldn't make up then all the way for all the extra money that they ended up spending on it. So it lost money, but it didn't lose as much money as it would have had they just pulled the plug. So no, it would not have been cheaper. It would not have been cheaper at that point. Taki75 writes, did you do it? Yes. What did it cost? Everything. Still the best scene of the movie. I like that scene a lot. I do. But to me, I will never hesitate to say that the best scene in Avengers Infinity War, in my opinion, the best scene in Avengers Infinity War, in my opinion, will always be that scene between Thor and Rocket. What else do I have to lose? That scene, to me, is the MCU on another level. That scene between Rocket and Thor, that ends with Thor saying, with Rocket saying, and what if you're wrong? And Thor says, then, well, what else do I have to lose? That scene was the MCU and comic book movies in general on another level. It was Logan-like level, dramatically. So I agree with you, Taki. That scene with what did it cost? Everything. Great line, great moment. I love that scene. But for me, it's that Rocket Thanos scene. The MCU has never had a scene like that. Like, not in any of the MCU was there a scene like that that had that kind of punch to it, you know? And it's really funny, too, because when you listen to the director's commentary and you hear the Russos talk about it, you can tell that is by far the Russos' favorite scene of the movie. Just listen to them talk about it. It's like, this was like, I think they never even thought they were capable of getting a scene like that on screen. And so to me, that's the gold standard. But hey, for you, it's the everything scene, and that's a great scene too. It's all subjective. Either way, we both love the film. All right, Murray Reich writes, movies that get re-released in theaters many years after the original run, who gets the profits, theater chain or studio? The answer is both. Whenever you put something on in the theaters are taking a cut. Whenever you put a studio's movie in a theater, the studio's taking a cut. There's no either or. Like, the studio doesn't get to come in and, hey, we're going to re-release our movie. Let us put it in your theaters for free. The theaters are like, how about that? And they're like, no. And the theaters can't go, hey, movie studio, we've got a spare screen. We're just going to put up one of your movies. We're going to charge tickets, and we're not going to give you any of it. No. So the answer, Murray, is both. The answer is always both. You step one foot into a theater, the theater's taking a cut. Rightfully so. You do anything with the studio's movie, they're taking a cut, and rightfully so. So the answer is both. Caleb Bradford writes, hey, John, I was wondering, have you seen This Is Us? I know you have a relationship with Milo, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Hey, man, look, it is a show that is not made for me. That is clear. But my wife loves it. And so that means when This Is Us is on, it's going to be on in my living room. So if I'm going to be in my house, I'm probably going to be watching it. And I got to tell you, I love the show. It is a masterfully made show, just about people. It's all, the entire show is completely character driven, with multiple fleshed out, multi-dimensional, beautifully written characters. And, you know, I've always been a big fan of Milo. Milo Ventimiglia. I've always been a big fan of Milo. He is the reason I met Anne. I've told that story a million times, so I won't tell it again. But Milo's the guy responsible for me meeting Anne. I've always been a big fan, but even I, as a fan of Milo, I never knew he was capable of the types of depth and everything that he brings to that role, to that character, to that show, and it got him an Emmy nomination, rightfully so, and a Golden Globe nomination. Not that that counts for anything, but it got him an Emmy nomination for it. Even I, as a fan, for years, I've been a fan of his, never knew he was capable of that. It's a great show, man. Again, it's a show that doesn't look like it's for anybody like me, but you cannot help but be drawn into it. It's so beautifully done. It's a beautiful show. It really is. Top notch. Let's see. Ben Rayner writes, have you seen the 8-Bit Guy on YouTube? Very cool. Talks about retro computers and does some fixing up of old computers. No, never heard of him, but that sounds like something that would be right up my alley and something I'd be interested in, so I'm going to look that up. Gareth Tucson writes, if you get a PS4 Pro, get the limited edition SpiderMan version, full red console with Spidey symbol and controller. Look it up. I'll probably buy the cheapest ones, because we were talking this morning on the John Campea show about the new Marvel Spider-Man game that's coming out, because the reviews for it dropped this morning and they're all great. And I have a Nintendo Switch, I have an Xbox One, but I'm not much of a console gamer at all. Like, I played 99% of my gaming I do on my PC. That's what I play my games on. But I was this close to picking up a PS4 when God of War came out. And now I'm this close again to... I think I've decided I'm going to get one. I'll talk to Anne about it, but I think I'm going to go pick up a PS4 just because all the reviews of this Spider-Man game have been incredible. And I think I want to get in on it. So Gareth is saying the one I should get. What I will probably do is get the cheapest PS4 version there is and just buy the game. So that's why I'll probably do it. Izzy Alonso writes, thoughts on The Nun? Trailers have looked good so far. Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier, Izzy, and yes, I agree. It looks really solid. I'm a big fan of the Conjuring universe, other than the first Annabelle movie. I think the trailers look solid. The character is super creepy as hell. Freaked the hell out of me in the last movie. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to watching it. Recruz writes, John, I just watched the Hunger Games movie for the first time. First two were good. Was disappointed with Mockingjay. It felt very drawn out. I don't think it needed a two-part movie. I completely agree. I completely agree. I am a fan. I thought the first Hunger Games was okay. I thought the first Hunger Games movie was okay. I liked it. I thought the second Hunger Games movie was great. The second Hunger Games movie was the gold standard of this franchise. I thought Part 3, or Mockingjay Part 1, was, again, okay. The last one was terrible. Mockingjay Part 2 was awful. The final film of the franchise was just terrible. So I'm kind of with you, except, you know, I think the first two were probably the best of the franchise. The last two were the two worst. I think 1 and 3 were okay to good, but number 2 is easily the gold standard of the franchise. It's a great movie, but that last one, man, just dropped the ball. They dropped the ball on that last one. I almost couldn't get through it. It was that bad to me. So anyway, yeah, so your thoughts on the matter and mine are very similar, Recruits. Sebastian writes, I'm looking forward to a Black Panther version of Crazy Rich Asians culturally. There is way more depth to that culture. My Asian friends tend to agree. I have no idea what you mean, Sebastian, by looking forward to a Black Panther version of Crazy Rich Asians. I don't know what you mean when you say culturally. There's way more depth to that culture. Well, one's a real culture and one's a pretend culture. So... Again, Sebastian, we're going back to your previous joke, right? I'm not quite sure what it is you're saying, or I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking, so I'm not sure I can address it. Sorry about that. Javier Riaz 405 writes, who's more underrated, Ben Foster or Colin Farrell? Ooh, well, you know, they're underrated in different ways. Ben Foster is not a household name. Like, a lot of people, you can say Ben Foster, and they will not know who you're talking about. So a lot of people just don't have any opinion of Ben Foster because they don't know who you're talking about. Colin Farrell, everybody knows who he is, but I think they just know him for some of his higher profile stuff and don't know about some of his smaller stuff where he really shines. So, I'll say this. I think Ben Foster is underappreciated. I think Ben Foster is majorly underappreciated. That dude is a, man, just 5 tons of acting talent explosives. Absolutely 5 tons of acting talent explosives is Ben Foster. He's amazing, but just that nobody knows who he is. So I'll say he's underappreciated. Colin Farrell, I think, is straight up underrated. Because most people know who he is, but they don't really think that highly of him. But then you said, well, did you see In Bruges? No. Okay. Did you see Saving Mr. Banks? No. Did you see, and you list a number of his other films. It's like, no. Well, then you got to see those to understand just how good of an actor Colin Farrell is. And he's in that new movie coming out with Viola Davis, Widows, coming out soon, which I am dying to see that movie. That movie looks awesome. So I'm sure he's going to completely deliver again in that one. All right. Recruz follows up with, also, is there any news about the Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 sequel? I remember there was lots of talk, but it never happened. So will it happen, or do you think another reboot is planned? Oh, I cannot imagine for the life of me. I cannot imagine for the life of me that they would ever do a sequel to that Nightmare on Elm Street movie. That movie made a grand total of $63 million domestically, and worldwide, total worldwide, made $115 million. That is not what they were hoping for out of that, and it wasn't any good. It just wasn't that good. So there would simply be no reason whatsoever to do a sequel to that. Now, will a Nightmare on Elm Street eventually be rebooted? Of that, I have no doubt. It'll go through another reboot at some point. It's just it's too big of a name, right? At some point it will happen. In the next 2 to 3 years, probably not, and I certainly don't think it's going to be a sequel to that one. There just doesn't seem to be any logical reason to do one to that. Let's see. Javier Riaz 405 writes, do you currently read any comic book or graphic novels? If so, which ones? I stopped right before Rebirth happened. I was reading a bunch of DC actually up at the time because I go through cycles in my comic book readings. Like sometimes I'm reading everything for a while, then I go away from it. And then like the New 52 came out, I was out, but then everybody said get into it. So I started getting into the New 52 and I started reading all that stuff. And then I got out of it again just before Rebirth. I haven't really checked out anything in Rebirth at this point. That's not true. I read the one Batman story in Rebirth with the 2 siblings, and I thought that was awful. I thought that was just awful. So the only thing I'm really reading right now is I'm getting caught up again on Damon. As in Dayman, as in I'm a man of the day, Damon. I'm rereading that. It's this great little story about there are vampires in the world, right? But every vampire covenant family has one trusted human who handles their business during the daytime for them. They are called Damon. And it's a terrific little story. So that's the one I'm currently getting caught up on right now. But I just haven't had time to keep up with the other stuff, at least not since Rebirth came out. So, but again, everything for me goes in cycles. I'm going to pick up my tablet probably in a month or 2 and go back onto Comixology and start downloading everything again. But for now, the only thing I'm really reading is getting caught up on Damon. Let's see. Murray Reich writes, how many games do you think the Browns will win? Ooh, well, you know what? They've improved. Man, the Cleveland Browns. Look, I'm not a Cleveland Browns fan, but oh my God, last year, getting into the last week of the season, I think everybody was cheering for them. Oh my God, come on guys, get one win. Just one win. And it never happened for them. And I just felt terrible for them. I'm going to go on a limb. 3. I think they take a good step forward this year. And while like 3 wins for an NFL team is not good, it's awful. It's completely awful. But it would represent a big step in the right direction. Because 3 wins would be 3 more wins than they had last season. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to guess they're going to win 3. And there's going to be a couple of their losses where they're going to be competitive. So that's how far I'm willing to go. I saw this one. one guy say Cleveland's going to win 8 games this year. I'm like, come on. Let's be realistic here. Cleveland is not winning 8 games this season. I don't care how favorable their schedule is. They're not winning 8 games. Now watch, they win 9. Sebastian writes, Dave Bautista wants Drax spinoff. What the hell? Google it. Well, I mean, everybody wants their own spinoff. I'm sure that got spoken probably long before the whole James Gunn situation. Warren Lucas writes, how are movies viewed using A-list counted towards box office totals, and does that affect the amount of money earned by the studios? Good question. Here's how this is what AMC has said. When I buy, because I have an A-list membership, when I book a movie ticket with A-list, AMC treats that as basically the national average of movie tickets, which is around $9 to $10. That's the national average for the cost of a movie ticket. So AMC, I believe, they count it as a $9 purchase. So when you book a ticket using A-list, and when I book a ticket using A-list, AMC counts that as the purchase of a $9 ticket. That's how they account it. And then they do the division of that money up however it's supposed to go. X amount, 30%, 33%, 35% of it stays with the theater. 60% of it, 65% of it gets distributed back to the studio. So out of that pretend $9 purchase of a ticket, about $5 of it, $5.50, will be sent to the studios representatively. So that's how AMC does their accounting for that. Murray Reich writes, is it strange that Empire 25 doesn't have red leather seats? Only Prime Room has, only the Prime Room has. The other AMC theater nearby does have one. Well, it's not strange, because like the AMC Burbank 16, which is like the second flagship AMC theater, like AMC Empire in New York, that's their #1 theater. AMC Burbank 16 is their #2 theater. Only the Prime theaters in AMC Burbank 16 have the red leather recliner seats. The IMAX doesn't, and all the other regular theaters don't either. I think they'll eventually do that, but that's a big, expensive thing to do, man. That's expensive. But they'll do it eventually. So, yeah, considering that the regular theaters in my AMC Burbank 16 don't have them, I'm not surprised that the Empire 25 also doesn't have them. So, yeah, not a surprise. Eventually they will, but it's not a surprise right now. Let's see. Still have more questions to get to here, and we are going to go over to, we're going to bring in the next set of questions. Let's see. Charlie Gray writes, what was the hardest thing to get used to when you moved to the U.S.? Oh, yeah, hardest thing to get used to. Honestly, well, I mean, there were a couple things to get used to. Number one, forget that it was a different country. I just up and moved to a new city where I didn't know anybody. I mean, that was challenging enough, let alone it being in a different country. Lifestyle-wise, the big thing was healthcare. That was the big thing. You know, I will never forget this. I remember it was in my first year that I was here, and talking, I was hanging out with some people, and everybody's trying to plan a fun event for like a Friday night, and somebody saying, hey, let's do this, and then let's go roller skating. Like, let's go old school and go roller skating as a part of our evening. But then, you know, one of the girls spoke up and said, well, I can't, because I don't have health insurance, and if I fall and break a finger or break my wrist, then I can't work for 4 or 5 weeks, and I'll go bankrupt, and I'll lose my apartment, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, to me, that is so alien. As a Canadian, that is completely alien talk. And like half of the people in that group I was with, they couldn't afford to have health insurance at the time. This is pre-Obamacare. And I just remember thinking, how backwards is that? That you can't even do something as planned to go roller skating, because if you fall down and hurt yourself, you could lose your apartment, you could lose your livelihood, you could lose everything because you got hurt, because you can't go to see the doctor, because you can't afford to go see the doctor. I'm sorry, that's backwards. I don't like getting into politics on this channel. I try to avoid it at all costs. I don't speak about politics. But since you bring up the big thing, I will mention that. I'm sorry, my brethren and friends in the US, this marvelous country that I get to live in and do my business in and know so many wonderful people. But oh my God, you know, you got the healthcare thing completely backwards. You guys are just corporate slaves. Americans are absolute corporate slaves to their healthcare corporate overlords. When corporations get to decide what kind of healthcare you get and what you qualify for and what you don't qualify for, that is fucked up. And the rest of the world looks, I mean, come on, guys. The rest of the world looks at the U.S. going, how do you not see how stupid your system is? Like, how do you not see how dumb that system is? And I don't care, Republican, Democrat, third party, the Libertarian Party, I don't care. Like, I don't give a crap. That one issue to me, as a Canadian expatriate living here in the United States and loves living here, that is the one thing I constantly look at you guys and goes, you guys are screwed up when it comes to this issue. You guys do so many things so great, but this one area, you guys really do just bend over and take it from the corporate overlords, from the healthcare corporate overlords. You let the money decide that. That's crazy. That is not what any other civilized country in the world does. But that to me was the big thing I had to get used to here. Like, it was funny because for a couple of years, a lot of people would ask me, as a Canadian living here, what's your health plan? I said, I'll tell you what my health plan is. My health plan is if I get sick, I call a cab. This is my health plan. I call a cab, take it to LAX, which is the airport, and I fly to Vancouver. That's my health plan. And I go get it fixed up there. That was my health plan for a long time. So that was the biggest and strangest thing for me to kind of get used to. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm still not used to it. It's still kind of crazy. Let's see here. And by the way, a great expression of this is, you know, the fan community just recently lost John Schnepp. And the expense and the cost and the bills that came in for his care are enough to cripple somebody's life financially. It's enough to cripple somebody. It's nuts. That just wouldn't happen where I come from. Where almost everybody comes from, that wouldn't happen. But it's just really kind of weird. And it's just that it recently hit home with that. But anyway, I apologize, guys. I don't like to go off on politics of anything here. I don't. I try to avoid those things. So I apologize if that felt a little bit grating, but it is what it is. So my apologies. Won't happen again. Mr. Hank Dunn writes, over under 25%, De Niro plays Carmine Falcone in Joker. Under 25%. I believe they've already said he's going to play some kind of radio host, I believe. So I think they've already kind of revealed what his character is. So by far under 25% that he's playing Carmine. Mr. Falcone to you. Don Jariasanat. I'm sure I butchered your name, Don. I butcher everybody's names. I apologize for that. Do you think DC Universe launches on the 15th and its content can survive among the many streaming services out there? It's a good question. I'll be honest with you. Right now, I see no motivation to sign up for it. That Teen Titans trailer was god-awful. Just god-awful. I have no intention to watch that. A lot of the content they have on there is available in other places. So, I mean, I don't know. It really depends. Let's see how it develops. That's the key. It's so hard to say right now just as it's going to launch, because guess what? When the Disney streaming service launches, it's not going to have a lot going for it either at first. The key is going to be, where is it going to be at in 6 months? What kind of content offerings are they giving in about 6 months? And I think how they develop will go a long way to determining whether or not they can financially survive. But I will tell you this, if they were trying to come out of the gate strong with a very limited offering, which is fine, the Disney's going to have limited offering too at first. But if the thing is that they're leading off their big appeal, their big attraction to come and sign up for the DC streaming service is Teen Titans, and that trailer sucked ass. I don't know. But we're going to have to wait and see. I believe this. We're not going to have any idea for at least 6 months to a year. We got to see where they are 6 months to a year from now. Then we'll be able to figure that out. All right. Let's move on here. Next one comes to us from Ant Banks 1984 writes, shout out to Nike for supporting Kaepernick. Yeah, I mean, good for them. Look, I'll tell you this right now. I'm not going to get political. I'm just going to tell you what my thought on something is, and then I'm going to move on. I think the kneeling for the national anthem thing is a completely valid expression. I do. I think that's a completely valid expression. There's some of you that have a different opinion in that. Perfectly fine. I'm not going to debate the issue. I'm just saying. That being said, because I wanted to give that context, that I support somebody's choice to, as a form of expression, to take a knee during the national anthem. That's what I think. You don't have to think the same thing. I'm just saying. But I say that to set up this. The reason Colin Kaepernick is not in the NFL right now, I believe, is simply because he's not a good enough quarterback. I'm sorry, he's not. I remember back when he was with San Francisco and he subbed for Smith. Smith got injured. He led them to a massively huge winning percentage. He got injured. Colin Kaepernick went in. They kept winning, so they decided to give the starting job to Colin Kaepernick. Eventually, they traded Smith to Kansas City. And what happened after that? Kansas City started winning all types of games, and San Francisco started to suck. I have said from that day, Colin Kaepernick is a flashy quarterback, but he is not a good NFL quarterback. I have believed that since day one. He's just not a good quarterback. I wouldn't have him on my team. And I respect what he does with the anthem and what he represents. I respect that. But I'm just saying I wouldn't have him on my team because I just don't think he's good enough. It's just that simple. Like, some people talk trash about Robert Griffin III. But I'll tell you right now, I would take Robert Griffin III in a heartbeat over Colin Kaepernick. Easily. So, hey, for Nike wanting to do something to make a statement, good on them. All power to them, all that kind of stuff. But just understand it's for what he represents, not because he's a great elite athlete, because I just don't believe Colin Kaepernick, and I've never believed that Colin Kaepernick is all that good of a quarterback. It just is what it is. I mean, he's better than me, but he's just not all that good. Anyway, Angry Irish Benjamin writes, that's a great name, Angry Irish Benjamin, I love that, writes, I've seen people say Disney will be set back by Gunn fiasco forever, but they won't. The company have had slumps in popularity before and still returned to form simply by making high-quality movies. There's a saying I have for that, Angry Irish Benjamin. Winning cures everything. How many times I got to make that a t-shirt at some point. But winning cures everything. There can be all this talk about, the controversy about James Gunn and blah, blah, blah. I'm the one doing most of the talking. So yeah, we can all talk about all the James Gunn situation, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Captain Marvel comes out and it's a great movie. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody cares anymore because winning cures everything. Winning cures everything. Now, if Captain Marvel comes out, let's say it sucks, which I don't think any of us believe that's the case, but let's say it does. Losing exasperates problems. Winning cures everything, but losing highlights problems. And if Captain Marvel comes out and disappoints, everybody's still going to be talking about the James Gunn thing again. It makes no sense, but it's exactly what's going to happen. It's exactly what's going to happen. That movie comes out and disappoints everybody, and people come up grumbling, they're going to start talking about the James Gunn thing again. Why? Because losing highlights all problems. But people walk in and watch Captain Marvel, and they love it, come out buzzing. Nobody's even thinking about the James Gunn situation again. So that's a long-winded way, Angry Irish Benjamin, to say I completely agree with you. Yeah, this ultimately, look, this is a momentary bump. This is not a game-changing or a defining moment for Disney. Disney made a mistake. Not necessarily in firing James Gunn, but absolutely in how they handled it. And maybe it was a mistake to let him go in the first place, but to me, the mistake was how they handled it. They made a mistake. They had a bad day at the office. Okay, they'll move on from it. And the fastest way to move on from it is winning, because winning cures everything. So I completely agree with your assessment there, dude. All right, next one. Noah DeGarmo writes, best screen adaptation of the Arthurian legend. Oh. You know what? It's not the best, but let me take this opportunity to say that I think Guy Ritchie's Arthur with Hunnam, Charlie Hunnam. I like that movie. I know everybody craps all over that movie. I know it tanked at the box office. I don't care. I had fun with that movie. I thought it was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. So just let me say that publicly. But is it the best one? No. Best one. There's not a lot that are good. Might actually be the animated one. It might actually be the animated one. You know what? I've never really thought about it. No, it's a great question. Let me think about it. It's a really, really good question. Alex Kahn writes, I was thinking there should be an Oscar for Best Soundtrack, honoring the films that use music in the best way. Nah, no. First of all, you're taking a bunch of songs that already exist and just kind of, somebody just picking songs to put in here and there and make that an Academy Award. I'll disagree with you. It's all subjective, perfectly fine. But yeah, I like best, music composing. That's music that is composed and structured for this thing that plays throughout 70% of the movie and blah, blah, blah. Best soundtrack? Just picking random songs from the top 40 or something and dropping them in? I don't know. I got to disagree with you on that, Alex. I don't think that's worthy of being an Academy Award category. Not at all. I would argue against that personally. But hey, that's your taste. My taste is different, and your taste is no less or more valid than mine. So there it is, and that's why we all get to be film fans together. All right, Angry Irish Benjamin writes, recently bought and watched The Incredible Hulk 2008 on Google Play. Not my favorite MCU movie, but I like what they did with the Hulk's animation, and it set up an interesting character arc for him and Bruce Banner. Your thoughts? Hold a second. Just want to make sure we're talking about the right one. And yes, I just want to make sure. Well, personally, I like that movie quite a bit. And I'm a little bit biased because I'm in that movie. Look for me. I was a cheap little extra in a few scenes in that movie. But also a lot of it was shot in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Actually, the big fight at the end of that film between Hulk and Abomination was shot literally on my street. It's not literally, it was one block up, but I could stand on my balcony and from my apartment and I could see the set on the street there. And it's awesome now because when I watch the movie, I can see these key Hamilton storefronts. And they replace some of the storefronts with these generic pizza shop signs and whatever. But so I am a little bit biased when it comes to that. I'll tell you what though, I still remember squealing with glee in that one scene where Hulk rips apart the cop car, slams each one of his fists into a half of it, and then goes boom, boom, and basically he's wearing ripped apart cop cars as boxing gloves that when Abomination came at him, he starts beating on him with them. Which in reality, I would think the Hulk's fists would cause more damage than a crumpled up car in his hand, but whatever, it looked awesome. And I loved Abomination. I really think, and I still hope, I hold out hope at some point, that they're going to bring back Abomination. Sorry, guys, I love chewing on ice cubes. I really hope at some point they bring Abomination back. I totally think they should. They very purposely said he's still alive, that he's on the raft. So they've got him there. Whenever they want to go back to Abomination, you've got something there you can do. I don't think they're going to anytime soon, but that would be really awesome. And yeah, I love the Hulk's animation in it. I like a lot of the stuff that, look, it's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I got a big kick out of it. That one scene in South America when he's running away and running over rooftops and down through the streets, and that chase scene, that was so well shot. Like that's a very underrated scene of cinematography, to be honest with you, is that whole scene in South America. Was great. But yeah, man, I like that 2008 Hulk. I enjoyed a great deal. I like it, and I'm glad you do too, man. All right. Nathan Oswald writes, keep one, lose one. Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's. Ooh, that's tough. But you know what? It's close, but not that close. I'll keep Ferris Bueller's. I love Breakfast Club. I love Breakfast Club. I do. But I mean, Ferris Bueller's is Ferris Bueller. And John Schnepp's in Ferris Bueller. So there's a little bit of bias in there as well. But Ferris Bueller's Day Off is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, come on. Breakfast Club is iconic. It's great. I love it. Wonderful. But if you're going to hold it up to Ferris Bueller, I keep Ferris Bueller. I lose Breakfast Club. I'm going to be sad we're losing Breakfast Club, but that's the one I keep. Tristan Sheehan writes, 5'9". I didn't realize they stack shit that high. Gotta love Full Metal Jacket. What's your favorite insult from the start? What's my favorite insult from the start? The start of Full Metal Jacket? If you're talking about Full Metal Jacket, man, it's been forever since I've seen that movie. I mean, it's so strong, but it's been forever. I can't remember the individual insult lines. I didn't realize they stacked shit that high. I would have to think about it. I would honestly have to think about it and go back over in my head. If you mean like favorite insult from any movie, again, that's something I'd have to think about. There's so many good ones, but that is a great line. I love that line. That's a terrific line. Thanks for sharing that. I'm No Chuck Norris writes, Wick versus Bourne versus Hunt versus Bond in a fight. Let you decide the style of fight. Empty hand, gun, knife, thank you. Well, I mean, it really all depends on the style of the fight. Empty hand, I'm probably going to go Jason Bourne. Pure empty hand, maybe Jason Bourne. With a gun, probably, I mean, here's the thing. Overall, I think Bond wins. Specifically, empty gun, empty hand, maybe Bourne. With a gun, John Wick. With a knife, hard to, well, I'll go with John Wick on the knife too. But it's, yeah, I mean, that's a great, honestly, Ethan Hunt wouldn't win any of them. And I'll tell you why, and why I actually appreciate that about Ethan Hunt. Whereas a lot of times, movies make the mistake of making their heroes, like Dominic Toretto in Fast and Furious, absolutely perfect and invincible, right? A lot of movies make the mistake of making their heroes completely infallible and absolutely invincible. Ethan Hunt, they don't... See, the character's more interesting when they're not like that. Ethan Hunt, like we just saw in Mission Impossible Fallout, he straight up loses a fight in Mission Impossible Fallout. Like, him and Henry Cavill are fighting a dude, and they both get their asses handed to them. Like, they straight up lose a fight. And I like that about it. It makes the character more interesting to me. But because of that, John Wick also, like, he wins every battle, but he takes so much. He gets his ass kicked so much in all those fights. So he wins, but he takes a lot of damage in those fights, right? So I really respect that and like that. Bourne, same thing. Bond, I mean, he gets captured, he gets caught, he takes momentary losses. That's why I like all these characters, as opposed to a Dominic Toretto. And I love me Vin Diesel, and I like my Fast and Furious movies very much. I just wish they didn't make Dominic Toretto so freaking invincible. Let's see here. Scarcy RS writes, hobby hip-hop artist. And that all comes down to things that you like. Absolutely nothing wrong. That are from Nathan Oz. There's still a... That'll do for now, guys, though. Thanks a lot for